to settle in, get cozy, and take a trip back in time. Grab a blanket, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft, soothing hum. If you're as obsessed with history as I am, hit that like button and drop a comment letting me know where you're tuning in from. Tonight, we're stepping into the heart of ancient Rome, right into the gritty, electrifying world of the gladiators. Forget the Hollywood gloss, this isn't just about muscled warriors and roaring crowds. The truth. It's messier, wilder, and way more human than you might think. So, let's dive in, straight to the streets of Rome in the 1st century, where the air hums with chaos and the Colosseum looms like a giant, waiting to swallow you whole. Picture this, you're standing in the middle of Rome, the eternal city, at the peak of its power. It's the 1st to 3rd century CE, and this place is a paradox, a glittering empire built on marble and blood. The streets are a sensory overload. Your sandals slap against uneven cobblestones, worn smooth by centuries of feet. Around you, merchants shout over each other, hawking fresh-baked bread, pungent fish sauce, and cheap wine that smells like vinegar. Carts creak under the weight of amphory, their clay sides slick with olive oil. Somewhere nearby, a butcher's knife thuds into a slab of meat, and the metallic tang of blood mixes with the dust in the air. Kids dart through the crowd, laughing, while a philosopher in a toga mutters about virtue to anyone who'll listen. It's loud, it's alive, and it's gloriously messy. This is Rome, not a museum piece, but a city pulsing with ambition, greed, and hunger for spectacle. Now, tilt your head up. There it is, cutting through the haze of cook fires and torchlight, the Colosseum. Even from a distance, it's massive, a hulking ring of travertine stone that seems to breathe with the energy of the city. Its arches yawn like hungry mouths, and as you get closer, the noise hits you, a low, rolling hum, like a storm gathering strength. It's the crowd, tens of thousands strong, packed shoulder to shoulder, their voices rising and falling in waves. You can feel it in your chest, that primal roar, as if the city itself is shouting. The Colosseum isn't just a building, it's the beating heart of Rome's obsession with glory and violence. And inside, that's where the gladiators live and die. Step through one of those shadowed arches, and the world changes. The air grows thick, heavy with the scent of sweat, leather, and sun-baked sand. The arena stretches out before you, a wide, oval expanse of dirt, stained in places with dark patches you don't want to think about too long. Above, the crowd is a writhing sea of togas and tunics, their faces flushed with wine and excitement. They're here for blood, sure, but also for something bigger, heroes, villains, stories carved in flesh and steel. And at the center of it all are the gladiators, men, and sometimes women, whose lives are a tightrope walk between death and fame. Here's the thing that might surprise you. Gladiators weren't just faceless fodder for the arena. They were paradoxes, caught in a weird limbo of Roman society. On one hand, they were outcasts, the lowest of the low. Slaves, prisoners of war, or criminals branded with infamy, disgrace that stripped them of any shot at respect or citizenship. The Romans looked down their noses at them, sneering at their blood-soaked trade. But on the other hand, they were rock stars. The crowd adored them, chanting their names like modern-day sports heroes. A victorious gladiator could have his face plastered on clay lamps or graffiti, his victories sung in taverns across the empire. Women swooned, men envied, and emperors sometimes invited them to dine. Despised, yet idolized. Hated, yet adored. It's a contradiction that hooks you, doesn't it? How could someone be both a pariah and a celebrity, all at once? Let's linger here for a moment, in the shadow of the Colosseum, as the torches flicker against the stone. The crowd's hum softens as the sun dips low, painting the arena in shades of amber and gold. You can almost hear the clink of a gladiator's armor being adjusted in the tunnels below, the low murmur of a trainer barking orders. This world, brutal as it is magnetic. It's a place where men fought not just for survival, but for a chance at something more: fame, freedom, or maybe just a fleeting moment of glory. And that's what we're diving into tonight, the lives of these fighters, from the grueling training that forged them to the stigma that chained them, and the slim, tantalizing hope of breaking free. Imagine you're one of them for a second. You're standing in the Lotus, the Gladiator school, at dawn, your muscles aching from yesterday's drills. The air smells of straw and sweat, and the clank of iron weights echoes in the courtyard. Your next fight could be days away, or weeks, but the arena is always there, lurking in your mind like a predator. Survival means strength, skill, and a whole lot of grit. But it's not just about the fights. It's about navigating a society that sees you as less than human, yet demands you perform like a god. It's about chasing a dream, a wooden sword called the rudis, the symbol of freedom that most gladiators never touched. As the stars begin to prick the Roman sky, the city quiets, just a little. The Colosseum stands silent now, its arches glowing faintly under the moon. But its stories, they're still alive, whispering through the stone. In the chapters to come, we'll walk deeper into this world. We'll sweat through a day in the Lotus, unravel the rules that govern these fighters, and meet rebels like Spartacus, who dared to defy an empire. We'll feel the weight of their armor, the sting of their wounds, and the fleeting thrill of their victories. So, settle in, let the distant hum of Rome's crowds carry you. The arena is calling, and its tales are just beginning. Let's leave the Colosseum's roar behind for a moment and slip into a quieter, grittier corner of ancient Rome. You're not in the arena now, with its cheering crowds and flashing steel. No, you're in the Lotus, the Gladiator school, a place where sweat, pain, and dreams of survival collide. This is where gladiators were forged, where every day was a test of endurance, and where the weight of their world pressed down like a heavy stone. Picture this, it's just before dawn, and the Lotus is stirring. The air is cool, carrying the faint scent of straw and leather from the barracks. You're jolted awake by the harsh bark of the Lanista, the guy who runs this place, part coach, part jailer, all business. Your bed. A thin straw mat on a stone floor, barely enough to keep the chill off your bones. You roll to your feet, muscles already protesting from yesterday's drills. There's no time to linger, the day starts now, and slacking isn't an option. The Lotus is a fortress of discipline, its high walls topped with spikes to remind you there's no way out. You're not just training to fight, you're training to survive. First up, the morning workout. You're handed a wooden sword, heavier than the real thing, designed to make your arms scream. The courtyard echoes with the clatter of wood on wood as you and the others spar, dodging and striking under the Lanista's watchful eye. He's not gentle, miss a step, and you'll feel the sting of his whip or a sharp insult that cuts deeper. You're practicing with the gladius, the short sword that's a gladiator's best friend, or maybe the trident if you're training as a retiarius. Every swing is a strain, every block a jolt through your wrists. The goal? Build strength, sure, but also muscle memory, so when you're in the arena, your body moves faster than your fear. By mid-morning, you're drenched in sweat, your tunic sticking to your skin. The sun's climbing, turning the courtyard into a furnace. You're not done yet. Next comes the polos, a wooden post driven into the ground. You attack it like it's an enemy, hacking and thrusting until your shoulders burn and your breath comes in ragged gasps. It's repetitive, brutal, and mind-numbingly dull, but it's also life or death. One sloppy move in the arena, and you're done. Injuries are common here, bruised ribs, sprained wrists, or worse, a cracked bone from a sparring partner who got too eager. There's no sick leave in the Lotus. You bind your wounds with strips of cloth, grit your teeth, and keep going. Pain is just another trainer. Let's talk food, because you're probably starving by now. Lunch is no feast. You're handed a bowl of barley porridge, maybe spiked with a few beans or a scrap of salted fish if you're lucky. The Romans called this gladiators gruel, and it's as appetizing as it sounds, thick, bland, and just enough to keep you standing. It's high in carbs, though, fuel for the endless training. You eat quickly, sitting on a bench with the others, the hum of low conversation mixing with the clink of wooden spoons. Some guys joke, others stare into their bowls, lost in thoughts of the next fight. You can't help but notice the empty spots at the table, men who didn't come back from the arena. That's the shadow hanging over every meal, every moment, the fight that's coming, the one you might not survive. Afternoon brings more training, maybe running laps around the courtyard with a heavy shield strapped to your arm. Your legs feel like lead, but you push through, because weakness isn't just failure, it's death. The Lanista drills you on strategy now, teaching you how to read an opponent's stance, how to feint, how to land a blow without exposing your side. If you're a Murmillo, with your big shield and helmet, you learn to stand your ground. If you're a Secutor, chasing down a nimble Retiarius, you practice closing the distance fast. Every gladiator type has its own playbook, and you'd better know it by heart. Mistakes aren't corrected with a pat on the back, they're punished with blood. Here's something you might not expect, the emotional toll is as brutal as the physical. Every day, you're staring down the same grim reality. The arena looms in your mind, a constant drumbeat of dread. Will it be tomorrow? Next week? Will you face a veteran who's killed a dozen men, or a terrified rookie who's just as likely to stab wildly and get lucky? You try not to think about it, but it's there, gnawing at you. Sparring partners become friends, sometimes closer than brothers, but you know you might have to watch them die, or worse, face them in the arena if the Lanista's feeling cruel. Trust is a luxury you can't afford, but neither is isolation. You're caught in a weird limbo, leaning on the guys around you all knowing any one of them could be your end. As the sun dips low, casting long shadows across the lotus, the day winds down. You're exhausted, every muscle aching, your hands blistered from gripping weapons. Dinner's another bowl of porridge, maybe with a splash of watered-down wine if the Lanista's in a good mood. You eat in silence now, the weight of the day settling over you like dust. Then comes the part most people don't talk about, the shackles. After all this, when you're too tired to even dream of running, they still chain you to your bunk. The iron bites into your ankles, cold and unyielding, a reminder that you're not a man here, you're property. The clink of those chains as you shift on your mat is a sound you'll never forget, soft but relentless, like the lotus itself whispering, you're not going anywhere. Let's pause here, in the quiet of the lotus at dusk. The courtyard is empty now, the training gear stacked against the walls. The air carries the faint scent of oil from the lamps flickering in the barracks. You can hear the distant hum of Rome beyond the walls, merchants closing up, taverns filling with laughter. It's a world that feels 1,000,000 miles away. To live like this, day after day, takes more than just a strong body. It takes a mind like iron, all that refuses to break. These men weren't just fighting opponents, they were fighting despair, fear, and a system that saw them as less than human. Yet they got up every morning, strapped on their gear, and faced it all again. That's not just strength, that's resilience carved into bone. Reflect for a second on what that must have been like. You're not eating well, you're hurt, you're scared, and every day is a grind that could end in a sword through your chest. But you keep going. Maybe it's pride, maybe it's hope, or maybe it's just stubbornness. Whatever it is, it's human, and it's raw. The gladiators weren't superheroes, they were people, pushed to the edge and finding ways to hold on. That's what makes their story hit so hard. It's not about the glory of the arena, it's about the quiet moments, like the clink of those chains, that show you what they endured. As the stars will over the lotus, the night deepens, and the world feels a little softer. But don't get too comfortable. We're not staying in the barracks forever. From the sweat and shackles of the gladiators' daily grind, let's step into the rigid, unforgiving rules that shape their place in Roman society. The Ludus was tough, but the world outside, that's where the real chains were forged. Ready to dive deeper? Let's go. Let's step back and look at the bigger picture, the invisible chains that bound these fighters, not just in iron, but in the rigid rules of Roman society. The arena was more than a stage for combat. It was a mirror reflecting Rome's obsessions, its hierarchies, and its contradictions, or peeling back the layers of the gladiatorial world, exploring the societal norms that shaped every swing of the sword and every cheer from the crowd. First, let's talk about the pecking order, because not all gladiators were created equal. The gladiatorial world had its own hierarchy, as structured as Rome's legions or its senate. At the top, you've got the elite fighters, the ones who drew gasps from the crowd just by stepping onto the sand. Take the retiarius, for example, the net-and-trident fighter. He's lightly armored, almost naked compared to his peers, with just a shoulder guard and a weighted net to his name. But don't let that fool you. This guy's a crowd favorite, darting around the arena like a panther, his trident flashing as he tries to entangle his opponent. The retiarius is all about speed and cunning, and a good one could be as famous as any Roman general. Then there's the Murmillo, the heavy hitter with his fish-crested helmet and massive shield. He's the tank of the arena, built to take punishment and dish it out with a gladius that can cleave through armor like butter. These guys were the rock stars, their names scrawled on tavern walls, their victories toasted with cheap wine. Lower down the ladder, you've got the Secutor, designed to chase down the slippery retiarius, or the Thraex, with his curved sword and small shield, evoking the exotic warriors of Thrace. Each type had its own style, its own fans, and its own rivalries. Think of it like ancient MMA, with matchups crafted for maximum drama. But then, at the very bottom, you've got the Noxii. These poor souls weren't even considered gladiators in the proper sense. They were condemned criminals, thrown into the arena with no training, no armor, and no hope. Their role? To die spectacularly, often torn apart by wild beasts or butchered by better-equipped fighters. The crowd loved it, but for the Noxii, the arena was just an execution stage. From the elite retiarius to the doomed Noxii, the gladiator hierarchy was a brutal reflection of Rome's obsession with status, even in the face of death. Now, let's zoom out to the bigger picture, the stigma that clung to gladiators like dust. In Roman society, being a gladiator meant carrying the mark of infamy, disgrace that branded you as less than a citizen, less than a person. Infamy wasn't just a word, it was a legal and social curse. It meant you were barred from voting, from holding office, from even sitting in the good seats at the theater. You were a pariah, lumped in with actors, prostitutes, and other dishonorable types. The Romans loved watching gladiators fight, but they sneered at the men behind the helmets. To them, you were a tool, a walking spectacle, your blood spilled to keep the masses entertained. It didn't matter if you were a slave forced into the ludus or a prisoner of war. Once you were a gladiator, your place in society was set, and it was at the very bottom. Here's where it gets wild, though. Some men chose this life. Yeah, you heard that right. Free men, with no chains on their wrists, walked into the ludus and signed up to be gladiators. Why on earth would anyone do that? For some, it was desperation. Crippling debt could drive a man to sell himself into the arena, trading freedom for a shot at paying off what he owed. Others were lured by the fame, the roar of the crowd, the chance to be a somebody in a city that chewed up nobodies. A successful gladiator could earn coin, adoring fans, even invitations to dine with the elite. But the risks? Insane. One bad fight, one slip of the sword, and you're dead or maimed, your dreams of glory buried in the sand. It's like signing up for a reality show where the loser's prize is a funeral. Yet these men, called octorati, took the oath, swearing to endure burning, binding, beating, and death by the sword. That's how magnetic the arena could be, even for those who had a choice. Let's linger in the ludus for a moment, because this place was the heart of the gladiatorial system. Life here was ordered, almost monastic in its rhythm. Every morning, you'd rise at dawn, train until your body begged for mercy, eat your meager porridge, and train some more. Evenings were for repairs, sharpening blades, mending armor, or just collapsing onto your bunk, the straw crackling under your weight. The Lannister ran the show, his word law, his whip ready for anyone who stepped out of line. It was a world of routine, of repetition, designed to keep you sharp and obedient. But it was also a world of tension. You're surrounded by men who might be your brothers in the barracks but your enemies in the arena. Trust was a fragile thing, built over shared meals and broken by the Lannister's orders to fight to the death. This rigid system wasn't just about keeping gladiators in line, it was about feeding Rome's hunger for spectacle. The games were a machine, and you were a cog, your life shaped by the need to keep the crowds cheering and the empire stable. Every fight was a performance, every scar a story for the masses. But what did it do to you, living like this? You're celebrated, sure, but only as long as you're winning. You're despised, no matter how many victories you rack up. You're trapped in a cycle where violence is your currency, and survival is your only reward. It's a life that demands everything, your strength, your courage, your sanity, and gives little back. Yet, somehow, men endured. They found ways to laugh, to bond, to dream of a day when they might hold the rudis, the wooden sword that meant freedom. Reflect on that for a second. You're in a world that sees you as nothing, yet demands you perform like a god. You're cheered by thousands, but you can't walk the streets as a free man. The Lotus, with its high walls and iron gates, is both your prison and your stage. To live like this, you'd need a core of steel, a stubborn spark that refuses to go out. These gladiators weren't just fighting for their lives, they were fighting to hold on to their humanity in a system built to strip it away. That's what makes their story so gripping. It's not just about the blood and the sand, it's about the quiet defiance of men who refuse to be broken. As the Lotus settles into the night, the torches casting soft shadows across the courtyard, you can almost hear the rhythm of this ordered life, the clank of a sword being set down, the low murmur of men talking in the barracks. It's a world of rules, of roles, of unrelenting pressure. But it's also a world where rebellion was born, where men like Spartacus looked at those walls and said, "No more." From the strict hierarchy of the gladiators, let's step into the story of one man who broke every rule, who turned the arena's chains into a weapon. His name echoes through history, and his tale is next. Ready? Let's dive in. The Lotus is quiet now, its walls holding the weight of Rome's rigid rules and the gladiators' chained lives. But within those walls, a spark was kindling, a man whose name would echo through history, not just as a fighter, but as a rebel who dared to break the chains. We're stepping into the story of Spartacus, the Thracian warrior who became the most famous gladiator of all, not for his victories in the arena, but for the war he waged against an empire. Let's start with who Spartacus was, because he wasn't born a gladiator. He came from Thrace, a rugged land of hills and warriors, far from Rome's marble columns. As a young man, he was a soldier, maybe fighting for his people or serving as an auxiliary in Rome's armies. But something went wrong. Maybe he deserted, maybe he was betrayed. Whatever happened, he ended up in chains, sold into slavery and shipped to the bustling port of Capua, south of Rome. By 73 BCE, Spartacus was no longer a free man with a spear in his hand. He was property, destined for the Lotus, where men were molded into killing machines. Imagine that fall, from a warrior with a homeland to a slave with nothing but a straw mat and a brand on his skin. It's the kind of injustice that could break a man. But Spartacus, it lit a fire in him. Life in the Lotus at Capua was no different from what we've seen, grueling, relentless, a daily grind of sweat and steel. Spartacus would have risen at dawn, his muscles already sore from the previous day's drills. He'd grip a wooden sword, heavier than the real thing, and spar in the courtyard, the clatter of wood on wood mixing with the Lannister's sharp commands. Maybe he trained as a Murmillo, with a heavy shield and gladius, or perhaps a Thrax, wielding a curved blade that echoed his Thracian roots. Either way, he was good, damn good. The Lanista would have noticed his strength, his quickness, the way he moved like he was born for battle. But Spartacus wasn't just another fighter honing his skills for the arena. He was watching, listening, planning. Every shout from the Lanista, every clink of a chain at night, every glance from the men around him, it all fed into a growing resolve. He wasn't here to die for Rome's entertainment. He was here to break free. The Ludus was a pressure cooker, and Spartacus wasn't alone in his restlessness. The men around him, slaves, prisoners, outcasts, shared the same hunger for freedom, the same hatred for the chains that bound them. They were Gauls, Thracians, Germans, men from every corner of Rome's sprawling empire, united by their suffering. Spartacus, with his soldiers' instincts and a charisma that could rally men, became their spark. He didn't just want to escape, he wanted to tear down the system that had stolen his life. But how do you fight an empire when you're locked in a fortress, surrounded by guards, with nothing but your hands and your will? You get creative. And that's exactly what Spartacus did. Here's the moment that changes everything, the pivot that turns a gladiator into a legend. It's 73 BCE, and Spartacus has had enough. He and about 70 other gladiators, men he's trained with, bled with, decide it's now or never. They don't have swords or shields, those are locked away. What do they have? The tools of the Ludus kitchen, knives, cleavers, maybe a spit or two. Picture it, a group of desperate men, their faces set, their hands gripping makeshift weapons that smell of onions and grease. They move fast, overwhelming the guards in a chaotic rush. The Lanista's shouts are drowned out by the crash of breaking wood, the thud of bodies hitting the ground. The gates of the Ludus, those iron bars that seemed unbreakable, swing open. Spartacus and his band spill out into the night, free for the first time in years, their breath steaming in the cool air, their hearts pounding with a mix of fear and exhilaration. This wasn't just an escape, it was a declaration of war. Those kitchen tools. They became the first weapons of the Third Servile War, a rebellion that would send tremors through Rome's foundations. Spartacus and his 70 men didn't just vanish into the countryside. They raided nearby estates, freeing more slaves, arming themselves with stolen swords and spears. Word spread like wildfire, and soon, thousands were flocking to his banner, slaves from the fields, shepherds from the hills, even some desperate free men with nothing to lose. Within weeks, Spartacus wasn't leading a band of runaways, he was commanding an army. Imagine the Roman elite, sipping wine in their villas, hearing whispers of a gladiator who turned their own weapons against them. This wasn't supposed to happen. Gladiators were supposed to die in the arena, not challenge the empire itself. Let's pause here, under the starlit sky of Capua, the Ludus now a silent husk behind us. Spartacus' rebellion wasn't just about freedom for one man, it was a cry for all the voiceless, the chained, the forgotten. His impact was immediate, seismic. He didn't just inspire a few dozen gladiators, he gave hope to tens of thousands, people who'd never dared dream of fighting back. Rome, with its legions and its arrogance, was caught off guard. This wasn't a rival army or a foreign king, it was a slave, a man they'd written off as nothing, leading a ragtag force that refused to bow. Spartacus wasn't fighting for glory or gold, he was fighting for a life stolen, for a world where men like him could stand tall. Reflect on that for a moment. You're Spartacus, standing on a hill, looking out at a camp of runaway slaves, their fires flickering in the dark. You know Rome won't let this go. You know the legions are coming, with their disciplined ranks and their endless resources. But you also know what's behind you, the Ludus, the chains, the arena where men die for sport. What would you do? Keep running. Fight. Spartacus chose to fight, not just for himself, but for everyone who'd ever felt the lash. That's resilience, Not the kind that's born in a gym or a stadium, but the kind that's forged in the heart of a man who's lost everything and still says, "I'm not done." Let's turn back to the heart of the gladiatorial world, the place where all roads led, the arena. The Colosseum, with its towering arches and blood-stained sand, wasn't just a stage, it was a crucible where men faced their fears, their fates, and the roar of a city that craved spectacle. We're stepping into the brutal reality of gladiatorial combat, not as distant spectators, but as close as you can get to the sweat, the steel, and the stakes. Imagine you're standing at the edge of the Colosseum's arena, the sand hot beneath your sandals. The crowd is a living thing, 50,000 strong, their voices crashing like waves against the stone tiers. They're a mix of everyone, senators in pristine togas, merchants with wine-stained tunics, kids perched on their parents' shoulders, all screaming for the show to begin. The air smells of sweat, roasted meat from fenders, and something sharper, metallic, that you try not to think about. Banners flap in the breeze, and somewhere below, you hear the low growl of beasts, lions, bears, maybe a rhinoceros shipped from some far-off land. The Colosseum isn't just a building, it's a theater of chaos, where Rome's grandeur and cruelty collide. And you're not here to watch. You're a gladiator, armor heavy on your shoulders, a sword in your hand, about to step into the spotlight. The day starts early, long before the crowd arrives. You're led from the Ludus to Rome's bustling streets, the clank of your chains drowned out by the city's din. At the Colosseum, you're herded into the hypogeum, the warren of tunnels beneath the arena floor. It's dark down here, damp, the air thick with the scent of straw and animal musk. You hear the creak of pulleys, the shouts of handlers moving cages, the nervous muttering of other fighters. Your gear is checked, maybe your armormillo, your fish-crested helmet gleaming, or retiarius, clutching your net and trident. The lanista gives you a final once-over, his eyes cold, calculating. You're not a man to him, you're an investment, and today's your chance to pay off. As the trumpets blare above, signaling the start of the games, your stomach twists. This is it. The games unfold in stages, a carefully orchestrated spectacle. First come the beast hunts, where hunters or condemned prisoners face exotic animals. The crowd roars as a lion tears into its prey, but you're still in the tunnels, trying to block out the screams. Then it's the midday executions, Noxii, those doomed criminals, dispatched in gruesome displays to keep the audience buzzing. Finally, the main event, the gladiatorial bouts. You're led to a gate, the wooden slats vibrating with the crowd's energy. The arena opens before you, blindingly bright after the dim hypogeum. The sand is raked smooth, hiding the morning's bloodshed. Across from you, your opponent steps out, his armor catching the sun. The crowd picks favorites, chanting names, placing bets. You're not just fighting for your life, you're putting on a show. Combat is a strange dance, part choreographed, part chaos. Some fights are scripted, especially for less experienced fighters, with moves practiced in the Ludus to thrill without killing. You feint, parry, strike, the crowd gasping at each near miss. But other bouts, especially between veterans, are unscripted, raw, and deadly. You're a secutor, maybe, facing a retiarius. He's fast, his net swirling like a storm, his trident jabbing at your chest. You duck, raise your shield, and lunge, your gladius seeking a gap in his guard. Every move is a calculation, too slow, and you're dead, too reckless, and you're exposed. The sand shifts underfoot, slick with sweat or worse. The crowd's roar is deafening, but you tune it out, focusing on the man trying to kill you. It's just you, him, and the rhythm of steel. Here's where it gets real, the gladiator's perspective. Your heart's pounding, adrenaline flooding your veins like fire. Fear is there, sharp and cold, but you push it down, because hesitation is death. You're not thinking about the crowd or the emperor watching from his box. You're thinking about survival, about landing the next blow, about staying on your feet. But there's something else, too, a tiny, stubborn hope. If you fight well, if you win enough, you might earn the rudis, that wooden sword that means freedom. It's a long shot, like reaching for a star, but it's there, glinting in the back of your mind. Every parry, every strike is a step toward that dream. You're not just fighting an opponent, you're fighting for a life beyond the arena, a life where you're more than a spectacle. The fight ends when one of you can't go on, disarmed, wounded, or flat on the sand. If you're the loser, you drop your weapon, raise a finger to signal surrender, and look to the editor, the sponsor of the games. He's usually a wealthy senator or magistrate, perched in a prime seat, basking in the crowd's attention. The audience screams their verdict, thumbs up for mercy, thumbs down for death, though historians argue the gestures were more complex. The editor decides, balancing the crowd's mood with his own agenda. If you fought bravely, you might be spared, sent back to the Ludus to heal and fight another day. If not, the victor's blade ends it, quick and final. The crowd cheers either way, their hunger sated. You're just a moment in their day, but for you, it's everything. Let's step back and look at why this all happened. The games weren't just about bloodlust, they were a machine, oiled by economics and politics. Emperors and senators funded these spectacles to win favor, distracting Rome's restless masses from empty bellies or corrupt leaders. A good games day could keep the plebs cheering instead of rioting. The Colosseum was a pressure valve, channeling the city's energy into roars and applause. Gladiators were pawns in this game, their lives spent to keep the empire stable. It's grim, but it worked. Rome's poor ate free bread and forgot their troubles, while the elite patted themselves on the back for their generosity. The arena was a stage, but the real performance was power. As the cheers fade, the arena grows quiet, the crowd trickling out into Rome's twilight streets. The sand is raked again, hiding the day's scars. Down in the hypogeum, the survivors limp back to their cells, their bodies aching, their minds replaying every moment. You're one of them, maybe, your arm bandaged, your rudest dream still alive. The Colosseum looms above, its arches soft in the dusk, whispering of the next fight. This was the brutal art of the gladiatorial world, where men faced death for a chance at glory. It's a lot to take in, the fear, the hope, the sheer weight of it all. But there's beauty in their defiance, and the way they fought not just for survival, but for something more. Reflect on that for a moment. You're standing in the arena, the crowd's roar still echoing in your ears. You're scared, you're tired, but you're alive. What does that feel like? To know you've stared down death and walked away. The gladiators didn't just fight opponents, they fought a world that saw them as disposable. Their resilience, their refusal to give up, is what makes their story hit so hard. It's not about the spectacle, it's about the human spark that kept burning, even in the darkest moments. Let's step away from the sand and blood for a moment, into a quieter corner of Rome's world, a place where fire and iron shape the tools of the arena. We're diving into the art of gladiatorial craftsmanship, where skilled hands forged the weapons and armor that made gladiators both warriors and spectacles. Imagine you're walking through Rome at dusk, the city's chaos softening into a hum of evening life. You turn down a narrow alley, drawn by the faint clang of metal and the sharp scent of charcoal. You've found a workshop, one of many that fueled the games. Inside, the forge is alive, its fire glowing like a captured sun. The smith, a burly man with hands scarred from years at the anvil, moves with a quiet precision. He's not just making tools, he's crafting the gear that will define a gladiator's fate. On one table lies a Murmillo's helmet, its crest shaped like a fish's fin, gleaming even in the dim light. Nearby, a retiarius's net is spread out, its weighted edges carefully knotted. Every piece here, from swords to shin guards, is tailored to a fighter's style, a testament to Rome's obsession with turning violence into art. Let's start with the Murmillo's helmet, because it's a masterpiece in its own right. This isn't just a bucket to protect your head, it's a statement. weighing up to 10 pounds. It's forged from bronze or iron, its surface polished to catch the sun and dazzle the crowd. The crest, often shaped like a fish or a plume, isn't just for show. It marks you as a murmillo, the heavy infantry of the arena. The faceplate is pierced with slits for your eyes and mouth, giving you just enough vision and air to fight. But here's the wild part. Some helmets were designed to amplify your breathing, turning every exhale into a low, guttural roar. Imagine stepping into the arena, your breath echoing like a beast's growl, the crowd leaning forward, half terrified, half entranced. That's not just armor, it's theater, crafted to make you larger than life. Now, contrast that with the Retiarius' gear, which is all about speed and deception. His weapon is a trident, light but deadly, its 3 prongs forged to pierce armor or snag a shield. The net, his real trick, is a marvel of craft, woven from strong cord, weighted with lead at the edges to spread wide when thrown. It's not just a tool, it's an extension of the Retiarius himself, a web to trap his prey. The smith who made this net knew it had to be durable enough to withstand a struggle but light enough to flick through the air like a whisper. The Retiarius has no heavy armor, just a shoulder guard and a loincloth, so his gear is his lifeline. One poorly tied knot, one weak prong, and he's done. The craftsmanship here isn't just skill, it's survival. Let's step into the forging process, because this is where the magic happens. The workshop is a symphony of heat and rhythm. The smith starts with raw iron or bronze, heating it in the forge until it glows cherry red. He pulls it out with tongs, the metal hissing as it meets the cooler air, and lays it on the anvil. His hammer falls, each strike precise, flattening and shaping the metal into a blade or a helmet's curve. For a gladius, the short sword every gladiator knew, the smith works the edge to a razor's sharpness, balancing it so it feels like an extension of your hand. Sparks fly, scattering like tiny stars, and the air grows thick with the tang of hot metal. Assistants pump bellows to keep the fire roaring, while others hammer out smaller pieces, rivets, buckles, the fittings for a shield. This isn't mass production, it's bespoke. The smith knows who he's crafting for. A murmillo needs a shield that can take a beating, so it's layered with wood and leather, reinforced with iron. A Thrax, with his smaller, curved blade, needs a sword that can slash and thrust in tight quarters. The smith talks to the Lanista, maybe even the gladiator himself, to get it right. He's not just shaping metal, he's shaping a fighter's chances in the arena. And it's not cheap. Outfitting a gladiator could cost a fortune, paid by wealthy sponsors who saw the games as a ticket to fame. The workshop was a business, its output fueling Rome's entertainment machine, but it was also a place of pride, where craftsmen poured their skill into every detail. Here's a detail you might not expect. The gear wasn't just functional, it was beautiful. Helmets were etched with scenes of gods or beasts, their surfaces inlaid with silver or gold for the starfighters. Swords had hilts carved with intricate patterns, grips wrapped in leather for both comfort and style. Even the Retiarius' net might have dyed cords, flashing red or blue as it spun through the air. This wasn't about practicality, it was about spectacle. The crowd didn't just want blood, they wanted a show, and the gear was part of the drama. A gladiator stepping into the arena wasn't just a man, he was a living statue, his armor and weapons polished to reflect Rome's glory. The smiths knew this, and their work turned the games into a cultural event, blending art with the raw edge of violence. Let's linger in the forge for a moment, the fire's glow softening the world outside. The hammer's rhythm is steady, almost hypnotic, each strike echoing in the quiet workshop. The smith wipes sweat from his brow, his hands steady as he shapes a trident's prong. This place feels worlds away from the Colosseum's roar, but it's just as vital. Without these craftsmen, the games wouldn't exist. Their work didn't just arm gladiators, it elevated them, turning slaves and outcasts into figures of awe. The arena was a stage, and the gear was the costume, the props, the scenery, all rolled into one. It's a strange thought, Men died, and men lived, because of the care put into a sword's balance or a helmet's fit. Reflect on that for a second. You're holding a gladius, its weight perfect in your hand, the blade catching the forge's light. This isn't just a weapon, it's a piece of someone's craft, someone's life. The smith who made it will never see the arena, but his work will decide whether you walk out or fall. There's a kind of poetry in that, a connection between the quiet forge and the chaotic sand. The gladiators fought with more than their strength, they fought with the tools of Rome's artisans, each piece a small defiance against the brutality of their world. It's a reminder that even in a place of violence, there was room for beauty, for skill, for something human. Let's step back from the firelight and the arena's roar to look at something bigger, the legacy of the gladiators, the mark they left not just on Rome, but on the way we think about courage, survival, and heroism. Let's start in Rome, at the height of the gladiatorial games, where the Colosseum was more than a stadium, it was the pulse of an empire. Gladiators were the stars of Rome's entertainment industry, a machine that churned out spectacle to keep a sprawling city of 1 million souls distracted and loyal. Emperors like Nero and Trajan didn't just fund the games for fun, they used them as a political tool, a way to flex imperial power and keep the masses happy. Free bread and a day at the Colosseum could quiet a restless crowd, turning grumbling about taxes or war into cheers for Murmillo's victory. The games were propaganda, plain and simple, showing off Rome's wealth, exotic beasts from Africa, prisoners from conquered lands, and gladiators trained to perfection. Every fight reinforced the idea that Rome was untouchable, its order absolute, its glory eternal. But the gladiators themselves, they were the paradox at the heart of it all. Slaves, criminals, outcasts branded with infamy, yet they were the ones who made the crowd roar. Their role wasn't just to fight, it was to embody Rome's ideals of strength and discipline, even as they were denied the rights of citizens. They were disposable heroes, their lives spent to keep the empire's engine running. The Colosseum could host up to 80,000 people, and every seat was filled with folks who saw gladiators as both less than human and larger than life. That tension, that contradiction, made the games more than entertainment. It made them a cultural cornerstone, a ritual that defined what it meant to be Roman. The gladiators didn't just shape Rome's leisure, they shaped its identity, proving that even the lowest could serve the highest purpose, if only for a moment. Now, let's fast forward, because the gladiators' story didn't end when the Roman Empire faded. Their image, once tied to shame and blood, began to shift over centuries, morphing into something almost mythic. By the time the 19th century rolled around, European artists and writers were obsessed with Rome's grandeur, and gladiators became symbols of noble struggle. Paintings showed them as chiseled heroes, standing defiant in the arena, their eyes blazing with courage. Never mind that most were slaves or desperate men fighting for survival, the Romantic era turned them into icons of individualism, men who faced death with a raised chin. This was the seed of the gladiator we know today, the one that Hollywood would grab and run with. Enter the 20th century, and films like Gladiator in 2000 cemented this new image. Suddenly, gladiators weren't just historical footnotes, they were blockbuster heroes. Russell Crowe's Maximus, with his brooding intensity and quest for vengeance, wasn't exactly accurate. Sorry, no evidence of gladiators yelling, "Are you not entertained?" but he captured something deeper. The movie painted gladiators as underdogs, men who could rise above their chains through sheer will. It's a romanticized view, no question. Real gladiators were more likely to be scarred, scared, and hoping for a quick mercy than delivering epic speeches. But the shift matters. It shows how we've taken a brutal reality and spun it into a story of heroism, one that resonates with our love for redemption arcs and defying the odds. Today, when you hear gladiator, you don't think despised slave, you think badass survivor, and that's a legacy Rome could never have predicted. Here's a surprising connection that might make you sit up. Gladiatorial combat has a direct line to modern sports psychology. Think about it. Gladiators had to step into the arena knowing death was a real possibility, yet they trained their minds to focus, to block out fear, to perform under insane pressure. Sound familiar? It's the same mental toughness athletes chase today, whether they're facing a championship game or a marathon. Sports psychologists study how to build resilience, how to stay calm when the stakes are high, and gladiators were doing this 2,000 years ago. They didn't have fancy terms like visualization or flow state, but they knew how to psych themselves up, how to stare down an opponent and not flinch. Researchers have even pointed to gladiatorial training, those endless drills in the lotus, the constant preparation for life or death moments, as an early example of mental conditioning. Next time you hear a coach talk about grit, think a gladiator. They wrote the playbook. Let's linger on that idea of resilience, because it's the thread that ties the gladiators' legacy together. These weren't superheroes with capes or gods with lightning bolts. They were men, sometimes women, too, pushed to the edge of what a human can endure. Shackled at night, fed scraps, branded as outcasts, they still got up every day, strapped on their armor, and faced the arena. Some fought for freedom, that elusive rudest that promised a new life. Others fought for pride, or just to see another sunrise. But all of them, in their own way, were fighting against a world that saw them as nothing. That's not just strength, that's a kind of stubborn, bone-deep resilience that cuts through time. It's the same spark you see in anyone who's ever faced impossible odds and kept going, whether it's a single mom working 3 jobs or an athlete pushing through injury. The gladiators remind us that heroism isn't about winning, it's about showing up, even when the deck's stacked against you. Picture the Colosseum again, but not as it was, packed with screaming fans. See it as it might have been between games, and the quiet hours when the sand was raked smooth and the torches burned low. A gladiator might have stood there, alone, looking up at the empty tiers, his armor heavy, his wounds stinging. What was he thinking? Maybe about the fight to come, or the home he'd lost, or the slim chance he'd walk away free. That moment, that quiet defiance, is what the gladiators gave us. They didn't just entertain Rome, they showed what it means to keep fighting, to hold on to hope in a world that tries to crush it. Their legacy isn't in the marble or the cheers, it's in the human spirit, raw and unyielding, that still speaks to us today. Reflect for a second on what that means. You don't have to face a lion or a retiarius to know what it's like to feel trapped, to feel the weight of a system that doesn't care. The gladiator's story hits because it's universal. Who hasn't felt like they're fighting against the odds? Their resilience, their refusal to break, is a reminder that even in the darkest moments, there's a spark that can carry you through. It's not about glory or fame, it's about the quiet choice to keep going. That's the gift they left us, carved not in stone, but in the stories we tell, the movies we watch, the way we cheer for the underdog. We've traced the gladiators' legacy through Rome's roaring arenas, their sweat-soaked training grounds, and the forges where their gear was born. We've walked with Spartacus, felt the weight of their armor, and seen how their story shaped empires and echoes in our modern world. Now, let's start with the heart of the gladiator's story, because it's not just about the blood or the spectacle, it's about what it means to endure. These men, and sometimes women, were pushed to the very edge of what a human can bear. They were slaves, prisoners, outcasts, branded with disgrace and chained to a life where death was always one fight away. Yet they didn't just survive, they found ways to hold on to their humanity. Picture a gladiator in the lotus, his hands blistered from training, his body aching, his mind heavy with the thought of the arena. He's got every reason to give up, to let despair win. But he doesn't. He sharpens his sword, binds his wounds, and steps back into the courtyard for another day. That's not just physical strength, that's a fire in the soul, a refusal to be broken by a world that saw him as nothing. Their story is a testament to human endurance, a reminder that even in the cruelest systems, there's a spark that keeps burning. That spark didn't just flicker in Rome, it's carried through time, and nowhere is it more visible than in the Colosseum itself. Today, the Colosseum is one of the world's most iconic landmarks, drawing millions to its weathered stones every year. It's not just a ruin, it's a symbol of Rome's complex legacy, a place where grandeur and brutality lived side by side. Walk through its arches now, and you can almost hear the distant roar of the crowd, the clash of steel, the quiet clink of chains in the hypogeum below. Tourists snap photos, marveling at the engineering, but they're also drawn to the stories, the gladiators who fought, bled, and sometimes walked away free. The Colosseum stands as a monument to both Rome's power and its contradictions, a place where men were crushed under the empire's weight but also rose to become legends. It's a mirror, reflecting our fascination with struggle, survival, and the thin line between glory and tragedy. Let's talk about redemption, because that's the thread that makes the gladiator's story so compelling. Most gladiators started as the lowest of the low, slaves, criminals, or prisoners of war, stripped of dignity and branded with infamy. Society saw them as disposable, their lives worth less than the sand they fought on. But the arena, for all its cruelty, offered a rare chance to rewrite that story. A gladiator who fought well, who won the crowd's love, could earn the rudis, that wooden sword of freedom. It wasn't common, only a fraction ever walked away free, but it happened. Imagine the moment, you're standing in the Colosseum, the crowd chanting your name, the editor holding out that simple wooden blade. You're not a slave anymore. You're a man, respected, maybe even celebrated. Some gladiators went further, becoming trainers or guards, their scars a badge of honor. That's redemption, not just in the eyes of Rome, but in the quiet knowledge that you've clawed your way out of the dark. It's a story that hits hard, because who doesn't root for the underdog who beats the odds? The gladiators' redemption wasn't just personal, it's part of why their story resonates today. We see it in movies like Gladiator, where Maximus rises from slavery to challenge an emperor, or in the way we cheer for athletes who overcome impossible backgrounds. The gladiators gave us a template for the comeback story, the idea that no matter how far you've fallen, there's a chance to stand tall. It's not just about fame or glory, it's about reclaiming your worth in a world that tried to take it away. That theme runs through history, from Spartacus' rebellion to modern tales of resilience, and it's why the Colosseum still pulls us in. It's not just stone and sand, it's a stage where human spirit shone through, even in the darkest moments. Let's linger on the Colosseum one last time, because it's the perfect image to close our journey. Picture it now, not as it was, packed with roaring fans, but as it is today, a quiet ruin, its arches softened by time, its stones glowing under a blanket of stars. The arena is empty, the sand long gone, but if you listen closely, you can almost hear the whispers of the past. The clank of a gladius, the murmur of a crowd, the steady breath of a gladiator facing his fate. These are the echoes of history, stories of men and women who fought, endured, and sometimes triumphed against the world that tried to break them. The Colosseum isn't just a monument to Rome, it's a monument to the human will, to the idea that even in the face of cruelty, there's a spark that refuses to die. Reflect on that as you drift towards sleep. The gladiators weren't so different from us. They faced their own battles, their own fears, their own moments of doubt. Yet they kept going, day after day, fight after fight, proving that resilience isn't about being fearless, it's about moving forward, even when the odds are stacked against you. Their story is a gift, a reminder that no matter how heavy the chains, there's always a chance to rise. The Colosseum stands as proof, its stones weathered but unbroken, just like the spirit of those who fought there. So, as the stars will over Rome, let the quiet of the night carry you. The gladiator's tale is done, but its echoes linger, soft and steady, like a heartbeat through time. For now, close your eyes, let the Colosseum's whispers fade, and drift into sleep, carried by the stories of those who fought, endured, and left their mark on the world. Good night, and may your dreams be as bold as the gladiators themselves.